It was a cold, rainy night on Highway 77, the kind of night where even the headlights seemed afraid to cut through the thick fog. Jake, a long-haul trucker with 15 years of experience, gripped the steering wheel tight. His rig was loaded with fresh produce heading north, but tonight something felt off. He had driven this route dozens of times, yet tonight the highway looked different. Shadows stretched across the road like dark fingers. The trees lining the sides seemed taller, more twisted, and the wind whispered in a way that sounded almost human. Jake shook his head. "Just tired. Need some coffee," he muttered. He glanced at the clock, 2:13 a.m. Perfectly normal for a long-haul driver, but the silence outside his cab was heavy, oppressive. A sudden flash of movement caught his eye. Something darted across the highway, a figure, pale and thin, disappearing into the fog. Jake slammed on the brakes. His tires screeched and the rig skidded slightly. Heart racing, he leaned out of the window. The road was empty, no sign of anyone. He laughed nervously. Must be a deer or a trick of the headlights. But deep down he felt a chill crawling up his spine. After the first few miles, Jake saw it again, a shadow on the road, standing perfectly still in the middle of the lane. He swerved, avoiding it by inches. The figure didn't move. It didn't run. It just stood there, staring. Jake's radio crackled. A voice, distorted and low, whispered, "Turn back." He froze. The highway was empty. No other trucks, no other voices. The sound seemed to come from inside his cab. He shook his head and turned the radio off. The miles passed slowly, each stretch of road feeling endless. Then he saw them, headlights behind him, too many, but no vehicles appeared in his mirrors. The lights followed, bright and blinding, yet when he checked again, there was nothing. Jake's hands trembled on the wheel. He had heard stories, truckers talking about ghost lights on Highway 77, mysterious vanishings, trucks found abandoned with doors wide open, drivers never seen again. He never believed them. Until tonight. Suddenly the fog thickened. Jake could barely see the road. His GPS blinked and went dead. The dashboard lights flickered. He tried calling in, but his radio and phone were dead. Panic rose in his chest. Then out of the fog, a truck appeared. Old, rusted, its paint peeling, headlights dim. But the strange thing? It had no driver. Jake froze. The truck moved slowly, almost gliding right in front of him. He slammed the brakes. The truck vanished. Heart pounding, Jake pulled off to the side. He needed to rest. But as he stepped out of his cab, the fog swallowed him. The silence was deafening. A cold hand seemed to brush his shoulder. He spun around, nothing. A voice whispered again, "Leave, before it's too late." Hours seemed to pass, or maybe minutes. Time felt wrong. When Jake looked back at the highway, he saw dozens of trucks lined up, lights glowing dimly, engines silent. Ghostly figures moved among them. Drivers with hollow eyes stared straight at him, mouths open in silent screams. Jake stumbled back into his cab and locked the doors. He didn't know how, but somehow the rig started. He hit the gas, tires screeching, the engine roaring. The ghostly trucks followed him, their lights chasing him through the fog. Hours later, the fog lifted. The highway returned to normal. Jake's rig was still running, his GPS alive again. He was alone. But when he checked the rearview mirror, he saw a shadow in the back of his trailer, sitting there, silently watching him. Jake never spoke of Highway 77 again. Some say he retired immediately after that night. Others say he still haunts the route, a terrified trucker, praying no one else ever encounters what he saw. And those who drive Highway 77 after midnight? Some swear the ghostly trucks still roam, waiting, watching, hungry for company. Past midnight when Tony, a seasoned trucker with nearly 20 years on the road, rounded the bend on Route 54. The highway was empty, stretching into darkness, flanked by dense forests, the kind of forest where even the owls seemed to stop calling. Tony had driven this route countless times. He knew every curve, every hill. But tonight felt different. The air was thick, almost solid, and the silence pressed against him like a heavy hand. He noticed movement on the shoulder, a figure, pale and wet from the rain, holding a thumb out. A young woman. Tony slowed and pulled over. "Hey, you okay?" he called out, rolling down the window. She didn't speak, just stared with eyes too dark for the moonlight, her clothes soaked and torn. "Need a ride?" Tony asked again. She nodded slightly. He unlocked the passenger door. She climbed in without a word. Her presence was cold, unnaturally cold, and the air inside the cab grew heavy, like breathing underwater. "Where to?" he asked. No answer. Her eyes stared straight ahead. He tried to speak again, but the voice in his head warned him to stop. The first few miles were quiet, too quiet. The rain pelted the windshield, headlights cutting through the darkness, but the woman didn't move or breathe audibly. Tony tried small talk. "You need a blanket or something?" Still no answer, just silence. Then he noticed something strange. His dashboard clock was spinning backward. The radio started crackling, whispering words in a voice that sounded like hers but distorted. "Don't turn, don't turn." Tony's heart raced. He gripped the wheel tighter. His hands were shaking. Okay. Must be tired," he muttered. But the woman turned to him. Her mouth opened, showing sharp, broken teeth. Her eyes were black holes. Tony slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded on the wet asphalt. The cab door slammed shut on its own, trapping him inside. The woman's whisper filled the space. "You shouldn't have picked me up." The truck lurched forward. The world outside twisted. The trees bent unnaturally, and the road seemed to stretch forever, like it had no end. Tony tried to shout, tried to reverse. The gears refused to move. Suddenly he realized he could see other cars, trucks, headlights, but empty. Not a single driver inside, just shadows staring at him as he drove past. He looked at the woman. She smiled. Or rather, something stretched her face into a grin that no human could make. Tony screamed. The radio screeched violently, static filling the cab, then a single, calm voice. "You can't leave until I let you." Hours passed, or was it days? Time was broken. The forest and highway twisted into impossible shapes, and the woman remained silent in her seat, watching him. Tony could see her reflection in the rearview mirror, but her eyes, they weren't mirrors. They were dark, endless pits that seemed to pull at his soul. He remembered the stories, truckers talking about the phantom hitchhiker. Some say she's a spirit of a girl killed on the road, wandering the highways forever, seeking company to replace her own lost life. Others say she's a demon, feeding on fear, trapping the living in her endless journey. Tony never believed them. Until now. Finally, just as dawn broke, the cab door unlocked. The woman was gone. The road outside was normal. The forests were just trees again. Tony's truck ran smoothly. He pulled into the nearest rest stop, hands shaking. He looked back at the highway, empty. He was alone. But as he stepped out to stretch, he saw something chilling. Muddy footprints leading from the road to his passenger door. But no one had been there. Tony quit driving trucks the next day. He never picked up another hitchhiker. And late at night, when the wind howls on Route 54, some say you can hear the faint voice of a girl asking for a ride. Midnight cargo. It was a moonless night when Carl, a long-haul trucker, picked up a last-minute job. The load was unusual, a sealed heavy container with no clear documentation, just instructions, delivered to the warehouse on Route 91 by sunrise. The payment was suspiciously high, but Carl didn't care. He needed the cash. The cargo was cold to the touch, even through the steel walls of his trailer. Something about it made the hairs on his arms rise. He shrugged it off. Just another night on the road. The first few hours were normal. Carl hummed along to the radio, headlights cutting through the dark highway. But as he drove deeper into the night, strange things began to happen. The GPS glitched, sending him onto an abandoned stretch of road he had never seen. Signs along the way were old, rusted, unreadable. The fog grew thick, curling around his truck like ghostly fingers. Then came the sounds, a scratching, faint at first, coming from the trailer behind him. Carl ignored it. Maybe the load was shifting, but the sound grew louder, more deliberate. Something was inside, moving. Carl stopped at a rest area to check the cargo. The trailer doors were locked tight. He pried the latch open, but the container was sealed from the inside. No way to see inside without breaking it. He could hear it now, faint whispers like someone calling his name. Carl backed away. No way, this isn't real, he muttered. But the whispers followed him, growing louder, insistent. The voice was unmistakable. "Carl, let us out." Panic gripped him. He slammed the trailer doors shut and locked them. As he returned to the cab, the engine roared to life on its own. The truck started moving, slowly at first, then faster, as if something unseen was driving. Hours passed in a blur. The road twisted unnaturally. Trees bent toward him, shadows reaching across the asphalt. Carl's reflection in the rearview mirror changed. His face looked pale, gaunt, eyes hollow. And in the trailer's reflective doors, he could see movement, figures, dozens of them, pressing against the walls, their faces twisted in silent screams. Carl tried to stop. The brakes didn't respond. The steering wheel felt like it was glued to his hands, controlling him instead of the other way around. The whispers returned, louder, screaming now, "We are yours, forever." Suddenly, the truck veered onto a bridge Carl didn't remember seeing. Water rushed below, black and still. He looked in the mirrors. The trailer was empty. Yet the shadows pressed against the walls, still moving, still screaming. Carl's mind spun. He remembered rumors from other truckers about cursed cargo, shipments that were never meant to be delivered, that transported the dead, or worse, things that should not exist. He had laughed at the stories. Now he wished he hadn't. Hours turned into what felt like days. Carl lost all sense of time. The highway stretched into infinity. The whispering shadows inside the trailer now spoke in unison. "You cannot escape. The cargo chooses." Carl screamed, pounding on the steering wheel. The truck slowed, then stopped. The trailer doors swung open. From the darkness inside, hands reached out, cold, blackened, clawed. Faces pressed against the walls, mouths wide, silent screams. Carl stumbled back. The figures surged toward the cab. The engine roared as if possessed. Lights flickered, then went out. Silence. When Carl awoke, he was alone. The truck was parked by the roadside, trailer doors wide open. The container was gone. His GPS blinked. Sunrise touched the horizon. Everything seemed normal, too normal. He never took another mysterious load, never drove alone at night. But every time he hears a truck engine in the distance, Carl swears he can hear whispering voices calling his name. And every time he looks at his empty trailer, praying that whatever was inside didn't follow him. Because some loads aren't meant for delivery. Some loads deliver